Okay. Welcome again, everyone, to Microsoft Viva Days 2022. Today, full day event is about Microsoft Viva, and the focus is on Viva Insight, Connections, Learnings, and Topics. There are few exciting prizes to be won at the end of the event, so stay tuned and be available for the quiz, which will be conducted at the end of the session. Thanks to our sponsors, through which we would be there is a possibility of this event, and you would be able to win the goodies and everything. So thanks to Penthara and Rapid Circle and Microsoft for sponsoring this particular event. So today, as Nandip said, I would be talking about consuming the APIs in adaptive card extensions to customize the Viva connection boards. We would be seeing different concept of how to consume different kinds of APIs and how to build these cards and navigate between the card views and quick views and everything. Before I start, a little bit about myself. I'm Siddharth Bagasia. I'm Microsoft 365 consultant. These are some of the social handles through which you would be able to connect with me. So let's quickly see the agenda. First, we'll start with overview of adaptive card extensions. What are the different types of views which we can create? Then we'll see why we would need to consume APIs to build the rich experience Viva connection cards. And then we will see demos and code walkthrough of three different types of APIs to consume SharePoint REST API, to consume Graph API, and to consume an external API in our adaptive card extensions. So as we've seen in the last session, adaptive card extensions are basically new kind of and SharePoint framework component, which will allow us to extend the Viva connection dashboard. The focus here would be basically to implement the components business logic and leave SPFx to make how that component would look good across all the devices and platform. So and just one thing to note here is that the cards which we would be building is not just would be available to be used on the Viva connection, but we can also use that card to be displayed into SharePoint page via dashboard, which we have seen in the last session. So there are two types of views which we would be able to, which we will be able to create while we are creating an adaptive card extension. The card view being the single view. Okay, so every adaptive card extension which we will develop, there would be only one card view which we would be able to create, which would be mapped to that particular adaptive card extension. And then there would be quick view, which would be basically something which would be displayed whenever an interaction has been done on the card view, whether it would be via card selection or whether it would be via buttons which are being displayed on the card view. And adaptive card, the quick view would be the one which would give us more flexibility and more control over, wherein we would be able to display detailed information of the particular item or the particular context the card view is getting displayed. And we would have to use the adaptive card JSON schema to basically the adaptive cards are getting rendered in the quick view. So anything and everything which is possible in adaptive cards, we would be able to use that and we would be able to render that in our quick view. So there are three kinds of card view layout and size. One would be just the heading. Then there would be heading plus image, and then there would be heading plus description, right? So as we said, the card view layout has very limited information which we can display. So depending on our requirement and depending on the card which we wanted to build, we can use these three different types of templates. And depending on the type of template which we will select, it will allow us to basically set that particular placeholder in the particular card view. Okay. And these are the base card, the card classes through which basically the card view would be extended. Now let's quickly see the basic card view. So if you see here, the basic card view would be displayed on a medium size. It would be displayed like this, and we would only be able to control what is being displayed in the heading area. So here in this case, which would be paid time of available, this is what we would be only able to control and display when we are using a basic card view, and there won't be any description or image which would be available. Then when we create a primary text card view, what we will get is we will get the title to be displayed, which is basically heading also, and also a description below that title. And if it is a medium size card, it would be displayed in a smaller scale. And if it is a large size card, it will be displayed here. and we would be also able to display the buttons. So if it is a small size card, there would be only one button which would be displayed because we will not have much space over this. And if it is large size card, we would be able to maximum space 2 buttons in the large size card. And this is the third type of card template, image card view, wherein we would be able to place an image. And if it is a medium card size image, the image would be displayed on the top, and we would only have control to display the heading, which is the title. And if it is a large size card, the image would be displayed on the right hand side, and we would be able to control what is being displayed in the headings. Now, let's quickly see the quick view. So quick view is something which would be loaded either on card selection or on the buttons which are displayed on the card view, right? And as previously mentioned, the quick views are basically designed over the adaptive card framework. It means we would have to build our UI surface using the JSON code. Basically, we would create an adaptive card template using the JSON schema, and dynamically we would be passing the data which we wanted to pass to basically get the required look and feel within that adaptive cards. Okay, if you want to design the adaptive cards, there is an website which is provided by Microsoft to basically design different kinds of adaptive card, which we can use to drag and drop certain available controls which are there in the adaptive card, and we would be able to get the JSON schema which we can basically copy. And also there is an option to dynamically pass the JSON payload to that particular adaptive card to see how the actually card would be looking like when it would be dynamic and when it would be rendered on the screens. So these are some of the examples of what are the possibilities of adaptive card which you can do. Now, things to know before you build your adaptive card extension, you should have basic knowledge of SharePoint framework because adaptive cards are new component type which is available with SPFx version 1.13. You should have knowledge of adaptive cards and how to design the adaptive cards if you are going to use the quick view. And as of now, the adaptive card extensions can only be created using React framework components. So as soon as we would choose to create an adaptive card extension, the SPFx Yeoman generator will not allow us to choose the framework, and by default it will create the required classes and the code structure using React. So you should know the basics of React on how to use property states and everything, right? With that, let's see, why would we need to consume APIs, right? I mean, as we have seen in the last session, to basically build a rich user experience based dashboard or an Viva connection home site, we would not have a card which would be static in nature. We would have a card which would always be dynamic in nature, which would be interactive in nature, wherein either frontline workers or depending on the targeting audience, the card would basically be able to do something on its own, right? And so this is to extend our Viva connection to get data from different data sources which are available, be it SharePoint, be it Graph API, or be it an external system wherein APIs are available for us to consume. So, and this would be in reality, this would be always the case wherein the cards which we are going to build would one way or another would be getting data from one place or another. So that is why we would need to know how to consume these APIs and in the adaptive card extensions. Now, as I said, different types of APIs which we can consume. SharePoint REST APIs, which are very much native to the SharePoint framework. Then Microsoft Graph APIs, then external APIs, and then other APIs. So when I say external APIs, this can be any public APIs which is available in the public domain somewhere, or it can be a product APIs which some product would have exposed, probably Twitter or any LinkedIn or any other products which is available. And other APIs, by others APIs, I mean the APIs which you might have created internally within your organization, which would be connecting to your databases like SQL database or something, which would have been created using an Azure App Service or Azure Functions or a Node.js based API, .NET Core API, or anything is possible. So any kind of APIs which you might have created, and if you wanted to basically consume that and create a dynamic adaptive card extension, that would be possible, right? Now, as I said, SPFx SharePoint framework has been used to generate the adaptive card extension, what we basically do is we create and we use the Yeoman generator at Microsoft at the rate SharePoint. And whenever we are asked to choose what type of component we have to create, we can use adaptive card extension component. And as soon as we choose an adaptive card extension component, it will ask us which particular template which we wanted to use. So as single adaptive card extension would have a single card view, you can either choose whether it is a primary card, whether it is an image card, or whether it is a basic card. And depending on that, different properties would be available for us to set, which would be rendered on the particular card, right? Now let's jump directly into demos and the code walkthrough of what we would be doing. On a high level, we would be understanding the basic code structure. We would be kind of seeing how to set different cards views and quick views. And then also the focus would be to consume the REST API and Graph API and the external APIs. And we will also see how to basically navigate between the cards by using previous and next button in the card view. Also, one of the demo we would be seeing would be how to use the previous and next button in the quick view itself, right? So with that, I'll go to the demo. So what I have is for us to save time, I have a project which is already been created, and I have added 3 adaptive card extensions, each one for one of the APIs which we are going to build. And I have Gulp Serve which is running. And by default, if I just go to my workbench and if I just load any particular card, it is just going to display the title and the description because I have choose the primary text card. And this is how it will look like in the large component. And once you click on the quick view is going to be loaded. So this is the basic structure, basic card which would be created as soon as you scaffold and SharePoint framework based project. And then what would happen is we can further extend it. I can, okay. So let's quickly jump in. I am hearing my own echo.
Yeah, I guess someone is unmute.
Okay, probably moderator will check that. I'll continue. So whenever we will add an adaptive card extension, so it will basically create one specific folder for a particular extension. So let's start with the SharePoint demo. The main entry class to the particular extension would be an extension file, which would be extended from the base adaptive card extension. And in this, what we would have is we would have a way to use the properties and the state. Then there would be an init method, and there would be the render card method through which the card would be rendered. And then there is method to also load the property pane configuration. So one thing to understand here is that the adaptive card extension can also be made configurable the way we can make an SPFx web part configurable. Same concept applies because it is built on top of the SharePoint framework. So whatever we would be able to make it configurable in SPFx web part is also possible in adaptive card, right? Important thing to note here is that any view which we wanted to use for a particular adaptive card extension, we would have to first create an unique identifier string for that particular view. And then we would have to register that using the classes which are available. So if it is a card view, then there is a class called card navigator which is available. And then we have to map that this particular variable would be loading the card view which is created here. And then there is a quick view navigator which would register the quick view, and then again it would be loading the quick view component which would be which we will see in a while, right? And you can have as many quick view as possible, so you can create your own quick view and register it here for you to use it in further in your logic to load different kinds of quick view as soon as the user is interacting with the particular card. Right. So right now what you are seeing is everything which is scaffolded and which is generated from the SPFx web part. I have not customized anything. Let's quickly see the card view. So in the card view, what you will have is there are 4 important methods to understand. OK, first thing is the data method, which is basically a getter method wherein you have to return what you need to pass into the card view. And depending on the card type, whether it is a basic card, image card, or primary text card, we would be able to set different variables. So because this is a primary text card, you would be able to set the primary text and description, which I have explained earlier. And the title is nothing but the title of this particular card, which is shown on the top of it. So this also you can basically customize. Right. If it is an image card, that you would be able to set the primary text and the image URL or base60 for a particular image. If it is a basic card, you will be only able to set the primary text. Right. The another important getter method is the card button, which is very much important. So this method would be overridden, and from where we would have to return whether we wanted which kind of buttons we wanted to display on a particular card. So right now, if you see, this is showing a quick view button. Okay, so this button is coming from this particular card buttons method. And what we are saying is that the action is of type quick view. And what we want to do is that as soon as the button is being clicked, we wanted to basically load the quick view, which is already been created here. Right. And that is why once we are clicking on a particular quick view, that particular quick view is getting loaded. Now, you can either, as I said, you can either have one button or you can have two buttons, maximum of two buttons. You cannot have more than two buttons onto it. If it is an card size medium, then only one button would be displayed. Though you would be returning two buttons, still on the UI, it will only render one button. It will not render the second button. If it is a large size, it will basically render two buttons. Then the another important method here is the on card selection. It means what you wanted to do whenever a particular card is being selected, right? So it means what you need to do when a card is selected, not the buttons, but a card is selected. So in this case, it is redirecting to Bing website. The reason behind that is on the card selection get property, we are returning that, okay, what you need to do is you need to, the type is external link, and you need to target it to www.bing.com, right? And here either you can have an external link card action, or either you can have a quick view card action. It means you would be either able to open an external link, or you would be able to open a quick view from here. Okay. Now going to quick view. In the quick view, sorry, one method which I wanted to highlight here is, which is not there, which is on action method, which we will see in the demo. But basically the on action method would be the method if you wanted to perform certain actions whenever a button is been clicked on the card view itself, or whenever you wanted to, same case happens in the quick view also. Whatever we wanted to do on buttons, click that actions, if you wanted to perform that, we can override it here. By default, it will not be override because the button is right now loading the quick view and the card is basically loading the external link. But if you to have the quick view, and if you wanted to open something on the action button, that also we can, which we will see in the demo. Going to the quick view, in the quick view, again, you have one method called get data, which is basically the data method wherein you have to prepare your data object, which you wanted to pass to your adaptive card JSON template. And the JSON template would basically be able to render that. So whatever we wanted to pass here, we can change this and we can set this. And then we have to basically make sure that the get data method is basically returning that, and the adaptive card template would be rendering the dynamic adaptive card, right? So and the template method is where the template is getting loaded. So it will be loaded from the template folder and in the quick view template JSON. So right now, if you see, you have title and you have subtitle. These are the two properties which you are passing to an adaptive card JSON, and that is why in the get data, you have to, in the get data in the quick view, you have to make sure that you are returning that two particular properties, which would be replaced dynamically in the adaptive card JSON. Okay, so with this, what I will do is let's quickly. So this is the base code structure of how the cards and the adaptive card extensions and things would be created while we are creating a base of folder, right? Now let's first jump into the first demo, which is in SharePoint API demo. Okay, so what I have done is for you to see the demo, I have already prepared a dashboard and deployed it as an SPFx solution. In this particular SharePoint demo, what we are going to do is this is the focus where this demo would be. So we have a scenario where we have a SharePoint list where you are tracking all your issues, and issues are assigned to somebody, and there is a status column there. Sorry. Yeah. So you have assigned column and you have status column there. So what we are going to do is we are going to query this particular list. We are going to filter it by assigned to logged in user, and we are only would be getting the entries or issues which are in progress or either in new. We will not be getting anything which is completed, right? So this particular adaptive card component, which is already developed, which we are going to see how we are going to develop it, it will say that you have 4 issues assigned. So if you see here, right now there are 4 items which are being assigned to me, which are in new and progress. So it means it says you have 4 issues assigned. And on click of anything, what I'm doing is we are loading the quick view and we are displaying the details of a particular issue, right? And we are seeing the issue title, issue description, what is the priority, what is the status, what date was it was reported, and we are having the next and the previous button. So because this is the first item, we are not seeing the previous button, but as soon as you click on next button, you will see that previous button and next button is enabled. So this is one of the important concept here on how to have buttons on the quick view or in the adaptive card through which you would be able to navigate between different items, right? And if you click on next again, it will going to display next issue. If it is the last item, it is not going to display the next button, but only the previous button. And we also have mark as completed button. In this we will see demo of how we would be able to update data back to the SharePoint to basically mark the status of the selected item to completed, so it would be removed from the view, right? So now, so this is the demo of what we are going to build right now. Let me start doing it. So for saving us time, what I have done is I have the base code structure ready, which I'm going to basically copy paste it from the base card. But for you to understand what are the different steps involved in creating this kind of particular card which is there, right? To start with, what we would have to do is we would have to prepare our state object, right, wherein the data would be holding. So in this particular case, what we will have is we will have item object, which would be holding the array of the items from the SharePoint. The current index would be holding the current selected index of the issues which has been displayed. And the current item would be holding the object of the current item to be displayed in the quick view, right? Now, as soon as we have the state object being sent, the next thing is to initialize that state object in the init method. So on the init method, we will start initializing it with null and 0 and null, okay, because we have yet not loaded the data. Next thing we are going to do is we are going to see how to get data from the SharePoint, right? So now here what we have to do is we will be using the SPFx client method, which is available, through which we would be able to interact with the SharePoint REST API. And this particular method is was already available as part of SPFx web part also, which we can use it here also, which will help us to call any SharePoint REST API, and it will automatically takes care of authorization, authentication, and everything, right? So what we need to really focus is at which API we have to call. And we just use this HTTP client get method, which will give us the client object. And then using that client object, we would be able to make the API call, right? So here, this is typical SharePoint REST API. We are calling the issue tracker list. We are filtering it by assigned to email, and we are using the context to get the current logged in user's email. And then we are also filtering based on whether the status is new or in progress. As soon as we got the data, what we will do is we are basically checking whether the response is okay or not, then converting into JSON. And as soon as it is converted into JSON, we are using the response JSON.value. So this is how the data would be written. The array of the items from the SharePoint list would be in the JSON object in the value property. And then we are setting the state here, which is the items and the current item, which would be index of 0. So as soon as the page is loaded, we first wanted to initialize it with the 0th index item, right? And now to use this HTTP client and everything, we would need to import one library. So I'll just import that library. That library, you don't need to install any additional packages or anything. You just have to import, which would be SPHTTP client, and which would be available from Microsoft itself, which would be sp.http. Okay. And now the method is ready. The next thing is to call this method. So what we are going to do is we are going to call this method in the init method, so that the data is been loaded as soon as the extension is loaded, and then we would be able to use that in the card view and the quick view. And now, as I mentioned previously, the state objects and the properties, everything are shared across all the views which are registered as a part of our adaptive card extension. It means we don't have to pass any data. It would be automatically passed to card views and the quick view. Okay. So coming to the card view, the next thing which we will have to do is we will have to override the data method, right? Because we need to control what we wanted to display in the card view. And in this particular case, it was, whether how many items has been assigned to you. So I'll have that logic added here. Okay. Again, what we are doing here is we are saying if the items object state item object is not null, if the length is greater than 0, then return the primary text saying that you have the item.length issues assigned to you, and click here to view as a description. If there are no item assigned to him, we are just saying that, okay, no issues been assigned, you can enjoy your time. And until the item object is loaded, it will just display loading on to the card, right? So this is how the card get data method is been prepared. Now, next thing we have to do is we would have to on the click of the card, we need to render our quick view, right? So what we are going to do for that is we are going to go to our quickview.ts file. And again, as I said here, what we have to prepare is the object which we have to send it to our adaptive card, right? So again, in this particular case, the object which we have to prepare is the item, the current item which is there, the current index of the item, and the item count. I will tell you why I need these two. Okay, this is to control the visibility of the previous and next button. So I need to know what is the current index and what is the total item count of the item being displayed in the card view, right? And so once you have added the required attributes in the get data method, we have to return that because data is already prepared and data is already shared to our quick view from the state object. So in the state object, we already have our current item, we already have our current index, and though we don't have directly variable for the length, but what we have is we can use the state.items, which is area of the item, to pass the item count here. Now, once we have this ready, what we would have to do is we would have to prepare our template adaptive card JSON, right? Now, before doing that, what I'll do is I'm going to so I'll just quickly paste the adaptive card which I have prepared, and I'll just quickly walk through that. Okay, this is nothing but what I have designed it from the adaptive card IO design, and to know what I need to display, and then use that JSON adaptive card and pass that data to this adaptive card in forms of the data which we are passing. So on the top, as you have seen, we need to display the issue title. So we are saying that item.title should be displayed as a text block. Below that, we wanted to display the description. Then there is a column set wherein we wanted to display 3 items, which is priority, status, and the date reported. There are few functions which are available through which you would be able to format the date and everything. For this, you can understand what are the functions available in adaptive cards. So this all concept is of how to use adaptive card and how to design your adaptive cards. And then there are action buttons. So you would have noticed the action buttons which were there on the quick view, where mark as completed and previous and next, right? So what we are doing here is we are saying that, okay, I need 3 buttons to be rendered, right? One is mark as completed button, and I'm assigning an ID to that button for me to identify which button was clicked. Okay, and that method we would be implementing in a while. Second button is the previous button and assigning an ID previous to it. And I'm using a when property here, wherein I'm saying that only display the previous button when the current index is greater than 0. It means if the current index is 0, it means we don't need to display previous button, but we need to display only next button. So that is why, based on this condition, this particular button would be either shown or it would be hidden, right? And that is why I need the current index and the item count. The next thing is the next button. Same thing. We are saying that only display the next button when the current index is less than item count minus 1. This is because our index would always be start with 0. So this is a typical logic which we will always write. right? So now we have our adaptive card schema ready, which would be able to hold the data and would be able to render it in the quick view. The only thing remaining here is what to do when a particular button is been clicked on the quick view, right? So now let us implement that. For that, if you remember, I told you that what we need to do is we have one more method which is says on action method, which is basically again an over method which we can overwrite, and which is again kind of a method which would be by default won't be implemented, but we can implement it on our own. And it will take single parameter, which is an action parameter, to basically pass the data. And in this particular case, we would be passing ID. In fact, you can also pass data from it. But here, to make it simple, we are just passing the ID. And then we are having switch case. Okay. So one thing to note here is any action buttons which are there, whether it is in the card view or whether it is in the quick view, we don't have to write different event handlers for each of the button which is there. By default, as soon as an action is been performed, why? Because in the template JSON we said that the button is of type action submit. It means that this action method would be called, and within that method we would have to write our own logic to control what we need to do, which kind of button was being clicked, right? So again here same, what we will do is if it is a previous button, we need to just decrement the current index -1 and also change the current item object from the current index -1 from the item of the array. If it is +1, if it is next button which is clicked, we have to just increment one. So this is purely simple logic which we've done. And then what if the button is clicked as mark as completed? It means in this case, what we will do is we will implement a method which would be mark as completed, which will basically go back to SharePoint and update that particular item to completed. Okay, so I'll implement that particular method here. So let us see what we are doing in this method. In this method, we are preparing the body object which we need to pass as a part of REST API post, wherein we are just updating one column and status to be completed. Then we are using the same SP HTTP client, and in this case we are using the post method. We have the REST API URL, again same thing. You are getting the list by title /items, and you are passing the current item ID. So this is where we know that the current item which is loaded in the quick view is the item which we are going to update, right? And then we are passing certain headers, because this is how the REST API would be, we would be able to use to post data back to the SharePoint. And we are passing the body object. And as soon as that is done, we are just slicing or splicing the current item which was been removed from the array, and incrementing the current item index to +1. It means it will start loading the next item in the queue, right? So this is the implementation of it. Ideally, two things to note here is that to make things simpler, I'm not using any SP provider class or common class to make all the data operations in place. But in the real world scenario, you should use an SP provider class, which should be responsible for calling all the methods, and the views and everything would be calling that SP provider class, right? And then second thing is we can also use PNP.js here. Okay, right now I'm not using PNP.js for the reason to understand that okay, which kind of APIs and how we are going to call it. But anything which we can do with SPFx web part, we would be able to do it in the adaptive card extension also, and you would be also able to use the PNP.js here. Okay, and I would suggest to use PNP.js. The reason behind is, you would not have to take care of all this kind of header being passed and everything, which would be automatically passed. It is very much powerful and very useful library, which has been used by many people to basically do the data operation with the SharePoint and also using Graph API. So that is another focus. But I wanted to explain everything which is available within adaptive card extension, which is provided by Microsoft as a part of SharePoint framework. That is why we are using this particular concept of HTTP client. Okay, so now this is done. All of this is been implemented. So if you can summarize, what we have is we have our card view, which is basically showing the number of issues being assigned. And on click of particular button, we are displaying the quick view where we have previous, next, and mark as completed item. and we have implemented it, and on click of the mark as completed, we are updating data back to the SharePoint, and using previous and next we are changing the index of the item so that to load the new item in the quick view. Okay, now if everything would have gone well, I'm just refreshing my workbench because I can see there are no errors, compile time errors, and we can see that you have 4 issues assigned to you, and once you click on it, it is displaying the issue 1, the description. You can go to previous next to load the previous and next item, and you can say mark as completed. As soon as the item is marked as completed, it is removed from the view and it has loaded next item. If we go back to the issue tracker, you can see that issue number 2 is been marked as completed. So it means it is marked as completed and removed from the view. Okay, so overall this is, and then once you click on it, the card view is also changed to that you have 3 issues assigned, which is the latest issues been assigned. So this is how basically you would be able to consume SharePoint REST API from Adaptive Card extension. Plus you would be able to load your quick view on the button click. Plus you would be able to use previous and next button to navigate between items in different quick views. Okay, now moving on to the next one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to again use my dashboard to show you how we are going to consume the Graph API. So in this particular Graph API demo, what I have prepared is that we would be calling a Graph API wherein we would be getting list of all the teams of the current logged in user, and we would be using previous and next button within the card view itself. So if you see, the difference here is in the earlier concept we had used previous and next button in the quick view, but here we are displaying it in the card view itself to load new items. And in this case, the item is not SharePoint item, but the teams which I am part of. And on click of particular card, we are basically loading a quick view, and within that quick view, we are loading all the channels within that team. Okay, so this is the demo of that particular card which we are going to create now. And if you see here, it will be displaying TNS of team, the team name and the channel name and the channel description. Here we are seeing the team name and the team description. Okay, so let's start building this. What I'll do is I'll quickly close all of this. And for this, first thing is I'll go to my workbench. I'll edit my workbench. I'll remove this card and I'll just load the Graph API demo card, which is the basic card which we have seen, which has been generated as an out of the box card. Right now, going here, let's first go to our SPFx extension method, class, wherein we would be preparing all our class to hold the data which we are going to get, and then we are going to get the data using Graph API. Right. So again, same thing. I'll start preparing my state object. Okay. In this case, if you see, concept is very much similar. You have a teams object which will hold list of all the teams of the current logged in user. There is a current index, which the current item index which has been selected. Then there is the current team which has been selected, and the channels which will hold the channels of the current selected team. Right. And then next thing is we would initialize it with 0. Initialize it with blank wherever required, the state object. Right. And next thing is let's create a method through which we would be able to make the Graph API call. So here also we are going to use the inbuilt class which is available from the context object as a part of SharePoint framework, which is MS Graph Client Factory, which gives us the client object, and using that client object we would be able to use that client.api method to make call to any Graph API which is available. Okay, then there is get, post methods. All the methods are available as it was available with the SharePoint also. Right. And in this case also we don't have to take care of authorization, authentication and everything. But one thing to note here is if your Adaptive Card extension is making any Graph API call, we just need to make sure that we are putting that permission in the config.json, so that as and when the solution would be packaged and it would be deployed in your app catalog, the SharePoint admin needs to approve that particular solution, that okay, this particular SPFX solution is allowed to make this all graph API calls, okay, and which would be delegated in this case, right? Because it would be delegated only, which would be able to call. Right. So that again is the same concept which we had in with SPFx also. Okay. So again, the graph client method, the class which is available is again from the same library, which is @Microsoft SP HTTP, which comes by default with the SharePoint framework. So we have now method ready. After we are getting the graph API call, what we are doing is we are setting the current item to with the current index 0. So the first item would be always 0th item, and the teams object to teams.value, because in teams.value within the graph API is where we would get array of all the teams the current logged in user is part of. Okay, so now we have our method ready. We need to make sure that we are calling this method. So I'll call it in the init method. And then we will move to our card view, because that is where we are going to basically display the buttons and the team name and the team description, and also write logic to navigate between previous and the next button, right? So in this case, in the card view, first let's start with the data method. Okay, so data method would already have the data which is available in the state object, because it would have been called on the on init. What we just need to make sure is we need to make sure whether the item's length is greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, then we need to set the primary text and description. In the name, we are displaying the name of the team, and in the description we are displaying the description of a particular team. And if there are no items available, we are just displaying loading. Okay, so data method is prepared. Now if you remember here, what we have is we have previous and next button, right? So this needs to be displayed on the card. Okay, and for that, as I said earlier, the card button method is the button which will basically be available for us to render either one card or two card. In the previous example, what we have seen, as soon as there was only single button, but whenever you click on that button, what we were doing is we were having the action of the type quick view, and we were just saying that, okay, load the quick view and nothing else, right? But in this case, what we would have to do is we would have to have that previous and next button inside the card view itself, right? So for that, we have to implement similar kind of logic which we did in the adaptive card. First thing is I'll declare an local variable for me to push the cards depending on which kind of condition it is. Okay, and it can have multiple of only 2 cards. I cannot push more than 2 cards because it won't be displayed, right? Then I'm checking if the current index is greater than 0, then I'm pushing the previous button, and I'm saying my type of the previous button is submit. Okay, and I'm passing the parameter ID as previous. So similar thing what we did with the adaptive card to know that, okay, which button was been clicked. And I'm also pushing next button if only when the current index is less than the item's length -1. Okay, and here I'm passing the parameter as next, and the type is submit, right? Now we have this button there, we need to implement on action method, right? Because that is where the things would need to be written whenever the button is been clicked, and this method won't be available by default, so we would have to write it. So I'll just say on action method. I'll quickly fix this and implement the iAction arguments. Then we are checking whether the action type is submit or not. And again, same thing here in the action data, we would get the ID object, which would give me whether it was a previous button or a next button which was clicked. Then we are having the switch case on that ID variable. If it is a previous button, same logic, we are decrementing the index and setting the current team to current index -1. And I'll talk about this get channel. Sorry. And then we have next.
Time check, your time is almost up, so if you could just wrap up.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Then we have current index +1, which will basically be to increment the index. And then we have channel method. So now the channel method we have to call, because this is where we are going to load the channels as soon as a particular team is been selected. We are going to use the same graph client factory and to call team/team ID/the channels, which will give me list of all the channels within the teams. Okay, let me implement add the imports. And now we have the channel method which is ready. And it would be loading the channels. Now next thing is to load the quick view. So in the quick view, what we are going to do is we are going to load the quick view to pass the channels, because that is what we are going to render. But also we are going to display the selected team on the heading. So I have two objects which I'm passing, selected team and the channels. And in the get data method, we are going to pass that whenever the channel object is not null. So pass the selected team, and we will use the selected team display name to display the team name, and the channels to render the channel. Now next thing, let's load the template JSON, and the template JSON is where we would be rendering the quick view. So here on the top we are displaying channel of team, so we will be using selected team to display name. Then in the channels data, in the items, we are going to list all the channels within there. So this will make sure that all the channels are looped and it is displayed within that particular quick view, and we are displaying the display name and the description. So I'll quickly just save this, and let us see in the So if you see here, I need to make the card size as large. And if you see here, the same web part is being loaded, right? Okay, I have missed one thing, which is that on card selection, we need to load the quick view, right? Because on card selection right now, it is still going to the external links. So what we have to do is we would have to make sure that we are loading the quick view whenever the card is being selected. So for that, on the card selection, as I said, we have to just say that, okay, load this particular quick view in the registry, and it will automatically load that particular quick view, and our quick view is already there. Vignesh, I have 5 minutes, right? I just need one more demo.
Your time is almost up. It's 2:50 actually. You ran over by 5 minutes.
Okay, sure, no problem. I'll just quickly complete this. Okay, on click of it, the channels would be loaded. Okay, now next thing is I would be showing. I was going to show this external API demo. Okay, but I'll just quickly walk through that code and not put it here due to the time constraint. But in this particular case, what we are doing is we are making an API call to and public API, which is Rapid API. And what it gives us is it gives us a particular word, a random word, and the meaning of that word. Okay, so Rapid API basically a public API available through which we would be able to make the API calls where you can subscribe, you can use pre and paid and everything, right? So this API which we are going to call is this particular random API, wherein it will give me words and the meaning of a particular word, right? So if you see here in the dashboard, whenever I am clicking on next, it is going to load a new word and the meaning of that particular word here. Okay, and there is no other action which I'm going to do. It's just that on click of next button, we are just going to display next word and the meaning of that word, and that would be random words which would be there. Okay, now because of the time constraint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly walk through the code which I already have. So in the card view, again here, we will prepare the data. Sorry, first we will go to the extension and we'll prepare the data. In this case, I need just word and definition. Then in this case, we are going to use HTTP client method, which is available through which we would be able to make the API calls. And as soon as we get the JSON object in this API call, what we are going to do is we are going to set the state of the word and the definition. Okay, and then once this is ready, the card view is the view wherein it would be doing all the logic. In this particular case, I have the card button, which would be only the next button. And on the next button, we are making again the same API call to get another random word which is available, right? And then on the card selection, we are doing nothing here because we don't want to display anything. So this is again a simpler use case of how to make external API calls. So focus here would be to call an HTTP client object and make the API calls and use that in there available. And this HTTP client object is is also available in the same library, which is sp.http. Okay, so with that, I'm concluding the session here. Hope this was useful, and if any questions, I would be watching the chat window and would be answering to that. Thanks, Vignesh. Over to you. Sorry for over taking more.